last night I was able to take my family to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. We probably watch Into the Spider-Verse 5 or 6 times per year, so as a family, this was one of our most anticipated films of the entire year. We've finally seen it, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. What's your excitement level? And if you've seen it, did you like it? Did it live up to the hype? Also, I'll put chapter markers down below so you can skip ahead if you don't want to know too much about the film prior to seeing it. So I'll talk about whether there's mid and post-credits scenes. Also, I got my kids' reactions to the film coming out of the theater. Karis actually wasn't very helpful at all. Karis, what'd you think about it?
I like the singing and...
You like the singing? Karis, there's no singing in this movie.
I like the song.
Also, I ran into an acquaintance, Jeff Jenkins, who's actually a National Geographic host and is going to have his own show on Disney Plus in the near future. I got his reaction to the film as well, and then, of course, my final score at the end. All those chapter markers are right down below. And let's get started talking about the good. And the early buzz for this film was simply spectacular. A batch of critics were able to see it last week. They posted their initial reactions on the internet, and there was people calling it the greatest animated film of all time, the greatest Spider-Man film of all time, the greatest comic book movie of all time, just one of the best films of all time. Almost everyone was universally praising this film, and the harshest criticism I saw for it was it's not as good as Into the Spider-Verse, which is a film that already was being praised as one of the best Spider-Man films of all time, one of the best animated films of all time, one of the best comic book movies of all time. So I went into this movie just expecting something fantastic, and it absolutely lives up to the hype. They swung for the fences with this movie. They wanted to do something special for animation as a storytelling format, as a comic book movie that's trying to do something that feels like a comic book brought into the animated form. And then as a Spider-Man story, it just wanted to dive in and really take it seriously while expanding on what that could possibly mean. It is ambitious on every single level. Even its runtime, my understanding is that this is the longest Hollywood-released animated film of all time, and it's only part 1 of 2. So this is part of this massive story that they're trying to tell. And as you go into it, it's not just that it's comic booky, it's not just that it's artistic with the animation, it's also very emotional. It cranks everything up. It still has the fun, the humor, but everything. They wanted to try and do the best possible, the biggest possible film that they could make, and they were wildly triumphant while swinging for the fences. That's why people are loving this film. Right out of the gate, what they do with the animation is that they take the fact that it's an animated film and they stop and think, what is every unique thing that you can do with animation? What are all the styles that we can bring to this? What are all the things we can get away with because it's animation? There's unique advantages to every storytelling format, and that's what they tried to do with this film. Do everything that is special about animation, every unique trick, tool, everything. And they went for it. And they spent the time to be able to get it right. And you see this right out of the gate with just these interesting animation styles, the way that it kind of layers some graphics, the way that it uses different techniques. It does so many things that you can't do with live action. You can't do with a novel. You can't do with a comic book. But specifically with animation, there's things that you can do. Like there's a sequence in this movie where 2 characters are having a very heartfelt, emotional conversation where they're just bleeding out their souls to one another. And the way that it's animated, the characters up front are animated the way they've been the entire film, but everything behind them, it's like running paint. And then as the emotion of the scene changes, the animation behind them changes. And it becomes more firm and locks in. And there's no other storytelling format where you can do that specific thing. That's what I'm saying. When people are, and other people are praising this as like a masterpiece of animation, that's what they're referring to. That this movie does things with animation that no one else is doing. And you can even look at the top animation studios of forever, Pixar, Disney. They tell stories that are animated and they have beautiful animation. But they're not doing unique things with animation. You watch this and you start to think, wow, there's so many more things you can do with animation. This is remarkable. Right now, these are the people doing the most interesting things with animation. And the reported budget for this movie is $100 million. So it's not like it's a small budget. But keep in mind, the budget for Elemental is $200 million plus. And you look at the trailer for Elemental, and it just kind of looks like another Pixar film, which means it's gorgeous, but it's fairly straightforward in what they're doing with the animation. And you look at this, and every frame is doing something creative, innovative, and interesting that's pushing the boundaries of what you can do with animation and allowing audiences to see stories in a new way like we have never seen before. And even we haven't gotten to the multiverse aspect of that, of where you go to different universes and every universe has a different animation style. And they do all sorts of wild and crazy things with that you couldn't get away with in a live action movie, but you can get away with a bunch of this stuff in a movie that's primarily animated. It just gets wild, the things that they're able to pull off because of this animation technique. But I can't stop raving about it because I've never seen a movie use animation like this before. And when you watch dozens or hundreds of movies every single year and you watch something and you go, wow, I've never seen that before. And you actually are wowed by something, you have to praise it. There's so many movies that are so cookie cutter, following the formulas, doing what others have done before, but just a little bit better, a little bit different. And then you see something that is truly innovative. You have to pause and just sit in it and go, wow, that was cool. Then, of course, the next thing you have to talk about here is the story. And while this is this big epic journey across the Spider-Verse that has all sorts of incredible Easter eggs, fan service moments, you can just watch the trailer and go, oh, that's cool to see all the different spider people and animals. But beyond that, it also tells a very human story. It's very character-based, and it dives into the lore of Spider-Man and those themes that are always present, that struggle to balance being Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and Spider-Man, or Gwen Stacy and Spider-Gwen. That balance of these being the person and the hero at the same time, and all the expectations that come along with it, and the loneliness that comes along with it. And it builds a story around that. And this idea of Spider-Man always not wanting to have to make the choice. Do you save person A or do you save person B? And Spider-Man's thought is always, I can save both of them. And it just kind of takes all of these elements that are just essential to Spider-Man and weaves a story that has stakes that are personal, that are epic, and that are deeply relational. Has all of them. So the choices that the characters make always has ramifications in these different directions and always ties to these big themes that are universal to Spider-Man. And then they build that into the lore of the story being told. And that's where it's such a celebration of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Miles Morales, Peter Parker, Peter Porker, all of the different versions. It's a celebration of all of it, but looking for those common threads that are always there and finding the story that weaves it all together in a compelling way, but also one that's massive in size, that provides all sorts of opportunities for just incredible fan service in the good sense. It's a sort of movie you watch it and you immediately go, well, this is Multiverse of Madness, not the one that came out last year where Multiverse of Madness meant pizzas in a bowl, go on red, stop on green. That's what they thought Multiverse of Madness was. This is Multiverse of Madness. This has all the fun with it that we thought we were going to get in that movie. This one does it here. And there's so many things that are going to put so many grins on so many faces as soon as this movie opens to the public, because it's just a celebration of all of these Spider-Man stories. And because it's very personal, it's very character-based. Miles is our star, but Gwen is right there behind him. And I think there's a strong argument that in another sense, while Miles might have the most screen time, Gwen, in another sense, is really the protagonist making certain choices that are driving the plot forward with what's going on. Because it's so character-based, it's very deeply emotional. There's this melancholy feel across the entire film. It still has the laughs. It still has the jokes. It has so many things that are just so fun that, you know, even my kids are like, did you see that one? Did you see that? Little details. It's all in there. And if you're into Spider-Man at all, there's so many things that will bring so much joy to you. But also has this lingering sadness related to the cost, the relational cost of being a spider person. And it just kind of explores that so well. And so it's a movie that once things kind of kick into high gear, you just feel this sense of stress, of betrayal, of danger in every direction, and you don't know how to get out of it. Like, you don't know how you resolve the mess that we're in by the time things get going inside of the story. And because of the nature of the central conflict of the story, I wouldn't say it's not necessarily philosophical, but it very much has this ethical dilemma that has philosophical implications of what's kind of going on and driving the conflict between the characters, where it's not really clear who the good guy and the bad guy, who the good guys and bad guys are. You have different perspectives on it. You can say that wasn't handled very well, or they should do this, but it's not clean cut exactly what the right thing to do is in light of the scenario that people are in. And the final thing to talk about on here is that it just has some really smart twists and turns. There's one that happens very late in the movie that you're following along with the plot, and they act like you're tracking along with it, and then it kind of pulls the rug out from underneath you, and you go, oh, uh-oh, and you just have this looming sense of danger because of what unfolds in the movie, in a way that I just wasn't expecting that type of twists and turns in the story. And so it's just a really put together script that's massive in size, a absolutely celebration of Spider-Man on so many different levels, while being deeply personal at the same time, and just a true triumph when it comes to animation. There's a few more things we got to talk about here, so let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. And I suspect that this movie might be a lot more polarizing than the early reactions are indicating, simply because it ends on such a cliffhanger. And it is such a broad, sweeping story that is so much more involved and so bigger and weirder and crazier than the previous film, that there's a lot of people that are just going to be like, I like the simplicity of the first one a lot more. I've already talked to a few people like, yeah, this one was really good, but I think the first one was a lot tighter and to the point. And there's going to be people very frustrated by the end of this film. It's very much part one of two. it's like it ends, and like I did not see the moment that this movie ended coming. It was like, okay, gotcha. Oh wow, that's the end. Oh, what? I thought we'd like 30 minutes left before this was gonna happen. It ends kind of like that, and you'll immediately go, I have to wait 9 more months? Like, I have to wait to see the rest of this thing? How long do I have to wait? It's that kind of cliffhanger ending. And so I think it's going to be more polarizing than some people are expecting. Some of you are going to watch it, wanting to love it. You'll respect the animation. You'll love the little moments. But your overall feeling, I suspect there's going to be a percentage that it was just too overstimulating and unsatisfying when the credits started to roll because of the nature of the cliffhanger. Other thing to talk about here, people always ask about mid-credit, post-credit scenes. My screening didn't have anything. The movie ends, and we didn't get any little teases, any little anything, no early trailer for the next film. There was nothing on my screening. And that's what seems to be the case for all the other press screenings. So I don't believe that there is a mid or post-credit scene for this unless they are truly saving that for when this thing opens in theaters. From there, let's move on to the bad. This is a fantastic film, so there's not much to say here. It does take a little while to get going, where it even kind of has a long prologue before kind of the titles and credits roll on it. And it does a lot of setup. It's telling this big, gigantic story. And so you have to establish all of these different character arcs to be able to pay it off later on in the film, have the proper tension. And so it feels like quite a while before the story really kicks into motion. And I wonder even if some of the reason that it feels like it's taking so long is that animated films just aren't usually this long and you don't have this much setup. They get to it much quicker. I don't know if maybe it was specifically that, but it did feel like it was taking a long time to get going. And then along those same lines, it is a hard cliffhanger. And when I say that, and I mentioned this earlier, but it's very much part 1 of 2. It's half of a story. It's not just like Empire Strikes Back where it ends and there's dangling plot threads of how are we going to save these other people? Oh no, the good guys lost. It's not that. It's not even Infinity War where, oh no, the good guys lost, but at least that completed this exact story about who's going to win the Infinity War to get the Infinity Stones. Oh, it was Thanos. Now we need another story to undo this. But at least that was a very clear completion of a story. This is like a hard cliffhanger. It just kind of ends. So it's really tough to have like your complete thoughts on half of a story. And when I see people calling one of the best movies of all time, it's a masterpiece, that's weird to me because it's not a complete story yet. The half we have is fantastic, but it's totally unresolved. And so I've been even pondering that overnight of just how hard of a cliffhanger it is. So loved what they did give me, but it's only half. It's half of the story. So all that said, here's what my kids said about it. So we just got out of seeing Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Chloe, what'd you think about it?
I really like the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. It had a bunch of new characters. It has like bright colors to it, cool animations, and I really liked it. I definitely recommend it.
I feel like it was a good follow-up to the original of what they did in the first one, actually being a good thing at that one, and then being a bad one in the next one, and then all the Spider-Man...
You mean like there's consequences for actions?
Yeah.
There we go.
And then all the Spider-Man aren't really clear of what they're doing because they're all fighting.
Yeah, so it's not clear good guys, bad guys. It's like morally ambiguous and complex. So we all thought it was a good time at the movies?
Yeah.
We recommend it?
Yeah.
Then here's what Jeff Jenkins had to say about it. What'd you think about it?
That might have been one of the biggest roller coaster rides I've ever seen for any action hero movie. I literally didn't think that second one could out-top the first one, but man, it was blowing it out the water. And make sure you catch my show, Never Say Never with Jeff Jenkins, July 9th on Disney Plus and Nat Geo.
Real Real quick before I give you my final score, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I have a ton of other Spider-Man content. Leading up to No Way Home, I reviewed every single Spider-Man film, and then I've done 1 zillion Spider-Man rankings in the past. So if you enjoy this kind of content and want to know my thoughts on more Spider-Man movies, you can check that out in these playlists somewhere around here. While it's only half of the story, it is a phenomenal achievement. It is groundbreaking in the way that it uses animation to tell its story. It's deeply emotional. It's a celebration of Spider-Man, and it is just a massive story on every level. If you're a comic book movie fan, if you love animation, this is a must-see movie. Overall, we're giving it an A. It's a 9.5 on the entertainment scale, and this is a must-see movie. And even that A could possibly go up or it could possibly go down based on how the next half of this story goes. But this is something you got to check out. Also, speaking of things to check out these playlists with my other Spider-Man content. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.